So the DJI OSMO 360 has been out for a little bit, and I managed to buy one on eBay and get it. So this video isn't sponsored. DJI didn't send me this camera or anything like that, but I did want to test it and review it, and I've got a great place to go do that today. And for DJI's first 360 camera, it's really good. It has some spectacular image quality, and so there are a lot of wins, but there are also a couple of misses, which we'll talk about as we go. And yes, if you're wondering, I am going to compare it to the Insta360 X5. Probably be the video that goes live after this one. But for now, we're going to just focus on what makes the Osmo 360 really great and what can be improved, some of it through firmware and some probably for generation 2. So the biggest wins are the image quality is fantastic. We'll talk more about that in a minute, but it's also compatible with a lot of DJI's action camera accessories. So the magnetic mounts and the batteries from the Action 5 all work with the Osmo 360, which, by the way, I have the hardest time not calling it the Action 360. So if I do say Action 360, please know that I just mean the Osmo 360. Now, before we talk about image quality, you need to understand that even though this camera films 8K, it's not 8K like a traditional action camera. You have to think about it differently. It's 8K for the entire 360-degree sphere that this camera films in. So you can't expect the same quality out of a 360 camera that you would out of a regular action camera because of the way that 360 cameras are designed. That being said, this camera does have a few tricks up its sleeve to help act similar to an action camera, which we'll talk about in just a minute. But when it comes to image quality, this is probably one of the best consumer 360 cameras that I've ever used. Not only because it shoots 8K up to 50 frames a second, but also because it has 10-bit normal color profile and 10-bit D-Log-M. So if you like to color grade your footage and make it match other cameras, this camera actually gives you some of the flexibility that you would need to do that. I don't think most people care about that. I think most people just care about being able to shoot and then use the footage however they want. So the normal color 10-bit profile is really nice. And because this films 8K, you can actually get some pretty nice framed images out of it. I've been using this for, I think, about 2 weeks now in a bunch of different scenarios. And the image quality that comes out of it is really nice. It's really impressive. It has that, I guess I would say, classic DJI look now, because DJI has a lot of cameras out there, but it looks really good. I filmed almost everything in 4K or 8K 30 and then put it out in 4K for a 4K timeline to edit with. Now, the Osmo 360 does have some slow motion modes. You can film 4K up to 100 frames a second in the normal mode, but if you switch to vortex mode, then you can film up to 4K 240 frames a second or 6K up to 120 frames a second, which gives you just a little more detail and gives your slow motion a little bit better look. But again, you can't think of this like a regular action camera. It's not going to produce the same quality. So why a 360 camera over something like a DJI Action 5 or 4? Well, 360 camera enables you to basically point the camera anywhere and know that you're capturing the shot. So you don't need to actually aim the camera at something, you just need to turn the camera on and start recording. And when you're recording, then in post, you take it and run it through either the Mimo app on your phone or DJI software for a desktop, computer, laptop, whatever. And you can do a few things with it. You can use a lot of the different views. You can do things like Tiny Planet, but you can also do things like I like to do, which is track your subject or track yourself through a shot. Almost looks like somebody else filmed it for you, almost, but it does just give you some nice motion and some nice movement in a shot, and gives you a way to show off, you know, transitioning from one place to another, or you know, reveal something new to the people who are watching your videos. Also, because 360 cameras are filming everything around them, you get fantastic stabilization no matter what, because there's so much data coming into the camera to know what's moving and what's not, and to stabilize the image in post. And beyond all of the modes like hyperlapses and time lapses, this camera can also take up to 120 megapixel spherical photos, but you get the most dynamic range and you get an HDR photo, higher dynamic range photo, if you shoot in the lower megapixel, which is 30 megapixels. That's when you get a true actual high dynamic range photo. But if you want to shoot 120 megapixels, you can, and you do get a little more detail for sure. And then because this camera has a newly designed square 1-inch sensor, if you didn't know, because everybody who did a launch day video talked about it, it gives you a very efficient amount of space. But also because it's a 1-inch sensor, and DJI has included their night mode, this camera actually does get some pretty good low light. So as you can see, it actually does do pretty well in low light. Now this isn't like night or anything like that, and no action camera is going to do well in that low light. But in a case like this, it actually does really well. So if you're running around on a street where there's lots of street lights, you'd be fine. Also, because this glacier ice cave is dripping a lot, it's a good time to mention that the Osmo 360 is waterproof. I believe up to about 40 feet, but the actual spec will be marked down here because I can't remember it off the top of my head, and I am 5 miles from anywhere with cell service where I could actually remember it. I probably should have made a note of it before I came up here to find this ice cave, but what are you gonna do? This is cool. The coolest thing to me about these ice caves is how they're always changing, which is good and bad, because like sometimes they're hard to find because they disappear and collapse completely, and then other times they're really easy to find. And so long as you have enough experience to know what you're doing in places like this, which I have a lot of mountaineering experience, then you can enter these relatively safely. Now, say you don't want to mess with the whole 360 camera editing in post, which I totally get because it is an extra step whenever you work with 360 cameras. Oh my gosh. There are two options with the Osmo 360. One is the option I'm using right now, which is selfie mode. You get a file straight out of the camera, ready to go, ready to post. It just basically is whatever is in this area is being filmed. But the other option is that the camera does offer single lens mode. And single lens mode is exactly what it sounds like. It's using one camera on one side or the other, you decide, and then recording a full 4K image that then you can post directly if you want to. This is useful if you know you don't need a 360 video, if you're gonna strap it to like a chest mount or helmet mount or something like that, and you wanna use it just more like a traditional action camera, then that's what you would use single lens mode for. Oh, this is cool. Also a little scary, but good test of night mode. This is normal. Let's switch it into night mode. Now, I generally don't use night mode. I prefer normal. And then I prefer to denoise in post because night mode adds a bunch of processing on top of the image, and I'd rather do that in post. But again, if you're just wanting to take the camera or file straight off the camera, then night mode is actually fine. Just not something I use a lot. One of the tricks to glacier ice caves is you don't want to spend a bunch of time right at the entrance and exit. Because there's a lot of rocks on the top that fall down frequently, you want to make that entrance and exit as quick as possible. Okay, a little farther up the mountainside, we'll talk about ecosystem and what makes, or where I think DJI kind of had a miss on how they've designed and built this camera. So, as far as being compatible with the DJI ecosystem, That may not seem like a big deal, but it actually is. It means you compare to things like the DJI Mic 2 or the DJI Mic Mini, which is what you've been hearing through this entire video pretty much, because it just gives such nice clean audio. And in case you can't tell, there's actually a bit of wind up here, but this thing does a great job of cleaning it up. Also means you get some noise cancellation built in. I don't generally use that, but you can use it if you want to. And when it comes to audio, if you're using a DJI Mic 2 or a Mic Mini, then you can also have the camera record on its 6 microphones to be recording stereo sound around you. So if you want a little more background sound and you want to just hear what the camera hears, like what you're hearing right now, this is the interior microphones built into the camera, a little bit of wind and a fair amount of noise around with the waterfalls, but you can do that. But then if you add the Mic Mini back in my case, then you get nice clean audio and you can still have a little bit of background noise in stereo if you want it. So it gives you some flexibility when it comes to sound design as well. But DJI also used the same batteries that have been in the Action 4 and the Action 5, especially the Action 5 because they're a little higher capacity. And those batteries will all work with the Osmo 360. So that's a fantastic win right there. If you already have a bunch of those batteries, you already have an Action 5, you know your colors are going to match up and your batteries are going to be useful between both. But that also means that it's compatible with the magnetic mounts that work for the Action. Basically, I think since the Action 3 or 2 have pretty much worked all the way through. So you have the DJI selfie stick with the magnetic mount on top, or any of the other magnetic mount accessories. This camera works with all of those to be able to quick connect, move things around, makes it pretty nice. And one of the best things that DJI has been doing that I wish every other action camera maker would follow suit on is they've been including internal storage. This camera has 105 gigabytes of internal storage, which means if you don't have an SD card, you can actually record a fair amount of usable footage without a micro SD card. I have never ever forgotten a micro SD card. True to form, I was in a hurry to get out here today because the wind wasn't blowing, which is a rarity on this lake, and I forgot any extra micro SD cards. So far it seems like this camera is like the gold standard of 360 cameras. And I would say when it comes to image quality, it probably is, unless you have some massive, huge professional rig. But there is one thing I think DJI really missed the mark on, and that's the lenses. They are not user replaceable. And if you can imagine me running around out here today over all of these rocks where basically any fall, any drop of this camera at all would totally destroy at least one lens and probably the screen as well. That's a little bit terrifying. User replaceable lenses would have been really nice to have on this unit. However, you can send the camera to get repaired for, I think, $25. Put it on the screen again. And in the battery runtime department, I've been getting easily more than an hour, like hour and a half, hour and 40 minutes maybe on a single battery recording in 8K 30. So that's really good. And considering that these batteries are all compatible with the Action 5 batteries, or the camera is compatible with all the Action 5 batteries, or the same battery, then take a couple of those batteries with you and you're really set for an entire day. And honestly, up to this point, this is the first time I've actually changed a battery in a day because I'm just using it for clips and behind the scenes stuff. That brings me to this camera and 360 cameras in general. If you want a simple to use, easy camera that's going to give you good camera image quality straight out of the box, then an action camera might be the camera you want to go for because you don't have to worry about the extra steps. But if you want a camera that gives you a lot of flexibility, that is excellent for capturing scenes where you don't know where the action's going to happen, but you know something's going to happen, you just want to capture everything, you want to be able to reframe and have that massive amount of flexibility in post, then a 360 camera is a fantastic way to go. And the Osmo 360 is a really good option on the market now. But now I'd like to know what you think. Let me know in the comments below. Next, you're gonna wanna check out this video right here. I'll see you over there. As always, if you have questions, ask me in the comments below or join my live stream, which happens most Wednesday nights at 4 p.m. Alaska time, 8 p.m. Eastern. We can have more of a conversation. I can answer questions that maybe I didn't get to in this video. I'll see you again soon in the next one. Cheers.